We must not forget that the evolution of Western culture is deeply linked to the encounter and cultural confrontation between different peoples and traditions. As the philosopher Vittorio Mathieu defends, what characterizes Europe is precisely its spirit ad ventura. Having in the figure of Ulysses, then passing through the wandering knights, the navigators and scientists, its materialization, which seeks to make the unknown in something known through the encounter with lands, with peoples, with cultures and traditions. The unity of Europe is precisely in the sharing of that spirit, the adventure of the peoples of the Mediterranean who move in a still circumscribed space, that of the Romans and the Germanic peoples, that of the Vikings, that of navigation towards the New World, that of ideas, science, and technology made of risk and predictability and novelty. It is significant that the scholar has chosen as the title of the first part of his book um, about the roots of Western culture. The title of the chapter is The Navigation. Ulysses meets new people and lands in a process of knowledge, the only danger of which is forgetting the center, the place of origin. However, it always ends up being remembered, returning to, and then moving on towards other lands and other people. Basically, what Vittorio Mattia teaches is that historically and sociologically, Western man, due to his restless character, the movement, whether physical or of the ideas, was never confined to being a monad, a simple or very small organism. In the same sense, the Spanish Juan Goytisolo expressed himself from the idea of the need to clarify in the debate on multiculturalism what is meant by culture and what is understood by traditional customs, good or bad. Speaking about multiculturalism in the first sense seems to him a redundancy for all culture. Spanish, French, Italian, or Arabic are the sum of the external influences that have been given that they have suffered throughout its history, and the list of aesthetic is in the longest distance. As for the use and habits of other countries, Muslims and non Muslims, which do not clash with the principles of the state of success, can be enriching for the whole of a globalized society. Jacques Le Goff also recalls the importance of mixing populations in European history, made up of assimilations, crossings, as for example with the mass arrival of barbarians to the Roman Empire, the establishment of trade between North and South, exchange of habits and linguistic terms. For the scholar, Europe's luck has to do precisely with this long history of coexistence and interaction between peoples. In fact, he stresses ethnic purity does not exist in the European space because the crossing between population is the law of human societies, and without it, they would be sterile and limited. The people who formed from crossroads and who have several cultures in their space, continues the author, are generally richer and more fruitful in terms of culture and institutions, with the mobility and mixing of populations being sources of progress. The Portuguese theoretical Eduardo Prado Coelho, well, was a literary critic, wrote the same. By accepting the energy of miscegenation as the matrix of all culture, we are, in a sense, saying that European culture is also mestizo and that it is like all culture, that is, all cultures, as they communicate and translate into the language of universal reason. That is why European culture does not become global by chance, is essentially globalized, is essentially the fruit of the encounter of many peoples. So we must not forget this when we talk about migrations, and we talk about refugees, and we talk about exiles, or we talk about the mobility between countries that nowadays exists, and that is not created by economic reasons, but is also a mobility that exists for science, for research, for the pleasure of living in other countries and in other cultures. So literature gives the puts in words aesthetically this fundamental condition of man and this fundamental condition of Europe as well, as a place of connections, a place of encounters, a place where we all are richer because we can get from all the cultures and traditions uh, the things that we think we need in our culture and tradition, making our culture and tradition also the fruit of many cultures and many traditions. Literature has always taught us that. We cannot think about Portuguese literature, Icelandic literature, English literature as something isolated. It has always been a field of the encounter of many influences and of other literatures. So one writer has always read many writers from other cultures and traditions, and he has always enriched his own aesthetic experience with these readings and with the approach to life of these different authors, these different influences. So literature, we can always think about literature as the fruit of all the universal contributions to the national literatures. So we came to the end of week 3, and I hope you'd like this trip together through culture and literature and migrations, and that you read a lot is always what I wish for you, because reading you get to be more empathic, richer, and have different meaningful visions of the world.